The views and opinions expressed on this program are those of the participants and do not reflect the views of BronxNet or the program underwriters.
BronxNet. Your voice, your views, your vision.
We do what we like. We do what we could. In the end, it's all good. In my Bronx backyard.
Hello, I'm Derek Woods, and welcome to another edition of Bronx Magazine, where we spotlight the people, places, and the events that make the beautiful Bronx the truly unique place that it is. We're here on the outskirts of the Bronx, right on the border of the Bronx and Yonkers, actually right here in Van Cortlandt Park, right next to Indian Fields. We're bordered by the Deegan Expressway and 233rd Street. You know, it's just another one of those beautiful spots that you can really enjoy this time of year now that spring has sprung. We're right across the street from the very famous Woodlawn Cemetery. Now, this part of the park actually has its own claim to fame. This and the entire area factored in to the crime of the century. The kidnapping of Charles Lindbergh's baby in 1932 shocked the nation. The dashing aviator, the first man to fly solo across the Atlantic, was a national hero. The abduction of he and wife Ann's 20-month-old child from their mansion in Hopewell, New Jersey, horrified the country. Even more so when Charles Lindbergh Jr. was found dead in a nearby woods 2 months later. The kidnapping was dubbed the crime of the century, and the subsequent trial of Bruno Richard Hauptmann, the man eventually convicted and put to death for the crime, still intrigues and provokes debate 75 years later.
People keep coming back to the Lindbergh case because the fact that, number one, Lindbergh was the great American hero. If it had been anybody else of a lesser means or profile, it probably would have gotten lost in the shuffle years ago. And the fact that his son's alleged kidnapper, convicted kidnapper, has been the subject of a lot of controversy from the day that they arrested him. And there are many people today who still argue the pros and cons of whether he was innocent or guilty or whether he was framed. And people love controversy. He could easily take it off, get it to the light to read. I don't know.
Richard Sloan is a former Bronxite that was hooked on the Lindbergh kidnapping as soon as he realized how close the Bronx was linked to the case.
I became interested in the Lindbergh case while living in Co-op City, and I picked up a book about the case called Kidnap by George Waller. And while I was sitting in my living room reading about it, I discovered that many of the sites in the Bronx had an important role in the case. And that stirred my interest. I went out and I looked at these sites, and I got a few friends together who were interested in it, and I said, you know, I can show you all of these places because I used to live in the Bronx. This is a few years later, and I know the ins and outs, and I took people on a tour, and it clicked.
Each year, Sloan does a day-long bus tour throughout the Bronx, which includes stops at the Bronx County Courthouse, where Hauptmann was first arraigned, the house of Dr. John Condon, a retired Bronx teacher that was picked by the kidnapper to deliver the ransom. In and around Norwood and Woodlawn Cemetery, where the kidnapper, dubbed Cemetery John, made contact. St. Raymond's Cemetery, where the final cash drop was made, and the home of German immigrant Bruno Richard Hauptmann, where half the ransom money was found and floorboards from his attic linked him to the scene of the crime. Many sites remain surprisingly similar to their appearance in the 1930s newsreels.
The state of New Jersey has rested its case, convinced that it has clearly shown that the defendant Bruno Richard Hauptmann came to the state of New Jersey on the night of March the 1st, 1932, brought the ladder which he built to the Lindbergh estate, climbed into the Lindbergh nursery, took the Lindbergh child and murdered it.
The nation may have been in the midst of the Great Depression, but the Lindbergh kidnapping was the top story and perhaps the first multimedia frenzy by the press, which seems so familiar today.
Well, it was the crime of the century, followed by the trial of the century, and it's hard a little bit to understand now just how famous the Lindberghs were in their time. Before the internet, before television, in the very earliest days of radio, in the early days really of journalism in this country, these may have been the most famous people on the entire planet. Everybody knew who the Lindberghs were. And at the time of the Great Depression, with tremendous poverty, no clear sight out of it, problems in Europe, what the Lindberghs did, the solo flight across the Atlantic, inspired everyone and lifted everyone. And so when tragedy befell that family, they couldn't get enough. And the press fed that desire for information every day, even every hour in the early days of radio on the case. Even when there was no news, they manufactured news.
And it's a story that still solicits a very mixed response over the guilt or innocence of Hauptmann.
The steamship Santa Ynez, arriving in New York from Panama, brings Dr. Josty Condon back from his 2-month vacation in Central America. And with his arrival, interest in the fate of Bruno Richard Hauptmann rises again to fever heat. Whether Josty knows more about the case than has been told is still a mystery Governor Hoffman of New Jersey would like to clear up. There have been angry words over the matter, but come up to the Bronx and see me sometime is Josty's message for the governor.
Hauptmann went to his death proclaiming his innocence, and his name still provokes debate over capital punishment. Even on the Sloan tour, the group was split down the middle.
And I think that the way the case unfolded left so much doubt in people's minds that people to this day wonder, I mean, you can see just on this tour, about half the tour thinks that Hauptmann was guilty and the other half thinks he was framed.
And also the fact that the accused kidnapper lived very close to where I live, and the little bit I know about it, I always felt that this person was innocent. And also feeling that he was framed from various information that I received from people I spoke to and the various things I've read. I was curious to meet other people to have their opinions and to learn more about the kidnapping.
There's a great expression that says, not everybody can be a lawyer, not everybody can be a doctor, but everybody's a detective, okay? The second thing is that there's an overwhelming amount of evidence that indicates that Bruno Hauptmann, in fact, committed this crime. And I think that people like to ignore that. I think 20/20 hindsight is easy in picking these cases apart.
It's just one of a phenomenon that catches on and it doesn't die, and somebody's people, especially the people that find Bruno Hauptmann innocent, if you stretch the conversation a little further, before you know it, they're saying Oswald didn't shoot Kennedy.
So I think that the controversy will go on and on forever.
If you'd like to learn more about the Lindbergh tour, you can go to www.lindberghkidnappinghoax.com. This part of Van Cortlandt Park is a big part of Woodlawn, which is a predominantly Irish-American enclave here in the North Bronx. And they recently welcomed a very special visitor. As part of her week-long visit to strengthen ties with Irish communities in the U.S., Irish President Mary McAleese visited various Irish community groups in the Bronx and Yonkers recently. After a ribbon cutting at the Emerald Isle Immigration Center on Katona Avenue, she visited the Ashling Center on the Bronx-Yonkers border. It's another immigrant support group, and their recently released book, When Memory Brings Us Back Again, is a collection of immigrant stories and has already sold over 3,000 copies. McAleese met with many of the book's subjects, and it fit right into the president's goals of reminding Irish immigrants that their work and sacrifices have not been forgotten.
You're our greatest ambassadors, and you are the people in and through your lived lives. So many people have come to know of Ireland and have come to admire it and respect it. And so we know that out of all the places these investors could go in the world, they chose to investigate Ireland because of your ambassadorship for us. So we thank you so much for that.
Then it was off to St. Barnabas Church, where she made a public appeal to the large gathering of Irish and Irish Americans.
We know that one of the things that has made the Irish community so strong, so vibrant, so dynamic, so respected in the United States is their love of each other and their love of community. The way in which they live that great commandment of the gospel to love one another, to honour each other by creating space in which they can gather, enjoy each other's company, share each other's sorrows, play the music, do all the things that build us up humanly, make the day a day to look forward to, make the day a day to look back on with gratitude. So I'm very, very proud to be here, to know that this community has struggled for so long and worked for so long to keep the connections here to each other and also to keep the connections with Ireland.
We are very happy to have the honor of the President visiting our parish, and it was particularly appropriate that she was here because we consider ourselves the largest Irish American parish in the nation, so it was appropriate for her to be here today.
Well, we were delighted to have the President officially open our new office at 4275 Katona Avenue. It was a wonderful occasion. She was assisted in that ribbon cutting by Oliver Coppell, and there was just a great excitement and buzz in the community, and we're delighted to have a new office available to serve the residents of Woodlawn and Yonkers and the surrounding area with immigration services.
Don't go away, we'll have plenty more Bronx Magazine right after these messages.
In my Bronx backyard, in my Bronx backyard, in my Bronx backyard, in my Bronx.
The Bronx, the borough of 1.4 million people who come from all over the world with an expanse of cultures that enhance New York's all-America city. And BronxNet Community Television is there, informing, educating, enriching, providing your voice, your views, your vision. BronxNet on channels 67, 68, 69, and 70 in the Bronx, or on the web at www.bronxnet.org.
In my Bronx backyard, in my Bronx backyard.
Well, as I told you earlier, we're here in Indian Field. Why is it named Indian Field? Well, in this area lived a tribe of Stockbridge Indians during the Revolutionary War. They were very friendly to the American forces, but they paid the ultimate price when British cavalry officers slaughtered them not too far from here. Hence, this was called Indian Field. Now, this is just one area in the Bronx that has a very rich history that a lot of people don't know about. There's quite a few more. The Copper Dome is very familiar to the thousands of motorists who travel to Deegan every day, but few realize the incredible piece of national history that it's connected to. Here on the grounds of Bronx Community College, Susan and Art Zuckerman are tour guides, historians, radio personalities, you name it. But one of their most challenging and perhaps most interesting jobs is their roles as cheerleaders for the historical and architectural landmark that is the Hall of Fame for Great Americans. This is the place that coined the phrase. Really.
What people are always amazed at, this is the first Hall of Fame in America. Today there are over 300 Hall of Fames in the United States. What's unique about this one, this is the first one. And the best one, we must say. We love having people come here and see how many people they know. There have been 102 people elected to the Hall of Fame. 4 busts have not been inducted or structured for the colonnade itself. So there are 98 busts as you walk through this beautiful, beautiful facility. Now these Americans aren't Americans who are sports figures or musical people, because we have Hall of Fames like that. These are most prominent Americans.
I mean, many of the people here are household names that everyone would know, like George Washington, Abraham Lincoln. But then you have people here like Louis Agassiz. You have people like Asa Gray. You have people like Joseph Henry that most Americans have never heard of.
The 3 buildings adjoining the colonnade, Gould Memorial Library, the Hall of Languages, and Baker Hall of Philosophy, were designed by celebrated architect Stanford White. These 3 buildings were among the first constructed on what was then the University Heights campus of NYU.
Because the reaction to people when they come here is absolutely most amazing. They are absolutely floored that we are in a place that is gorgeous. This campus has, by the way, been used for numerous movies. We've shot numerous movies. Recently, there was a movie called The Good Shepherd, with some kind of actors that maybe people have heard of. People like Robert De Niro, Angelina Jolie, who's never in the news anymore, and Matt Damon. That was shot here and predominantly shot here.
The first inductions into the Hall of Fame were in 1901, and national interest in the museum was intense throughout the early 20th century.
One thing that's very interesting is how famous is this place? You know, we ask people, how famous is it? Have you ever heard of it? A lot of people say yes, some people say no. What we find very interesting, there was this kind of movie that I would guess our listeners and our viewers would probably say they've seen it 100 times, which is The Wizard of Oz. Now there's a scene in the show when Dorothy comes down and her building from Chumson, Kansas, crashes on the Wicked Witch of the East. The Munchkins come out and they sing a song.
From now on, you'll be history. You'll be his, you'll be his, you'll be history. And we will glorify your name. You'll be a bust, be a bust, be a bust in the Hall of Fame.
To give you an idea that's how prominent this facility was.
Everybody
at that time.
knew the Hall of Fame in 1939. It wasn't some, term that was just a loose depiction of what should be a Hall of Fame. It was a specific location, and they meant here.
But as they say, fame is fleeting, and the hall drifted into obscurity on the national scene. But Art and Susan are hoping to change all that.
We have a campus here that is gorgeous. We filmed so many movies here. The waiting list for movies is amazing here. The tours here are free. They're open to the public. We'd love to show them the colonnade, which we think is magnificent, the Gould Memorial Library, which has incredible stories and an architectural masterpiece that you wouldn't see anywhere except going to Rome. And we'd love to see people come here. And really our focus right now in the Friends is really to let more people know. And the more people we have that come here, all they have to do is really say, look, there's a great place. You want to go to Washington, D.C.? You want to go to Rome? Maybe you should go to the Bronx.
The Hutchinson River and the similarly named parkway beside it runs through the East Bronx to the Whitestone Bridge, but it's a safe bet that few Bronxites actually know who it's named after. Anne Marbury Hutchinson was a woman of many firsts, America's first feminist, America's first female preacher, and perhaps most importantly, the very first advocate for many of the basic principles our nation was founded on. The Bronx has strong ties to Hutchinson. Besides the Parkway and River, PS 78 on Needham Avenue bears her name, and this is where we find murals of this amazing woman's story. Anne Marbury was born in England in 1612. At the age of 21, she married William Hutchinson, a prosperous merchant. They considered themselves Puritans, and in 1634, they, along with their 10 kids, came to the New World. They settled in the Massachusetts Bay Colony, what we know today as Boston, in search of the religious freedoms they were denied in England. Extremely well-educated and strong-willed, Anne Hutchinson refused to adhere to the expected roles of women of the day. She organized religious meetings and soon began expounding her own theology. Her religious insight and eloquent oratory skills attracted a large following, but soon put her at odds with the colony elders. She was the first woman defended in a Massachusetts court, brought upon charges of heresy and sedition. For more, we head down the Hutch, as it's known to Bronxites, to Mercy College.
So during Anne's time period, it wasn't being tried by your peers. You were tried by the men who held those positions. There were no women who held those positions. And when we look at Anne Hutchinson, I think Anne Hutchinson and the trial that she went through are the trials that many women have gone through since that time.
At the trial, without benefit of counsel, it is said she bested the best of the colony's male preachers, theologians, and magistrates, with her keen insights and thoughtful retorts. Despite her vigorous defense, she was excommunicated and banished in 1638.
I think banishment was a blessing for her because she didn't have to endure the intolerance of the people that were in her community. Banishment for her was liberation. And in many ways, she liberated not only the women of America, but I also think she liberated the women of Central and South America.
She moved with her family and other followers to create the Portsmouth settlement, which later became Rhode Island. After her husband's death in 1642, Anne Hutchinson moved to create another settlement in Eastchester, New York, an area we know now as the Bronx. Legend holds that her settlement could be seen within sight of the old Split Rock, which borders the Hutch and I-95.
Anne Hutchinson, I would say, is an entrepreneur ahead of the term that we use today. Here's a woman single, several children, and decides to come all the way from this little island called Rhode Island. Now she comes to this little place called the Bronx and settle down with her family and start a farm, to start producing, to start earning money, and again, ahead of anybody as far as women are concerned.
Sadly, Hutchinson refused to leave her home in the midst of an Indian dispute with local Dutch settlers, and in August of 1643, she and 5 of her children were massacred by Siwanoy Indians. Legend again says she sought refuge in the Split Rock during the attack. In fact, the Split Rock has been preserved mainly because of its ties to Anne Hutchinson, and she truly lives on in the First Amendment of the Constitution, which guarantees Americans freedom of religion. Welcome back to Bronx Magazine. I'm Derek Woods, enjoying a great spring day after a really, really long winter. Now let's head down the concourse to find out what our friends at the Bronx Museum have in store for everyone here in the Bronx. April 1st marked the opening of the Bronx Museum of the Art's new exhibition, Here and Elsewhere, a striking collection of 36 artists from around the city.
Elsewhere is the 27th annual Artist in the Marketplace exhibition. It features the work of the 36 participants in the Artist in the Marketplace program. And Here and Elsewhere kind of refers to the idea of the work which is addressing a lot of current political, economic, and social instability that's going on right now, both in the U.S. and abroad. Several of the works are using newer kind of media or technology, which obviously is an interest and a concern for some of them, especially with the way that technology is kind of encroaching on our lives. Several of the artists are using more interactive pieces, which allow the viewer to actually get involved in the work and kind of play a part or a role in the way the work is seen and viewed.
The exhibition is part of the Bronx Museum's groundbreaking Artists in the Marketplace program, which helps give new artists the skills they need to survive the ups and downs of the art world.
What it does help them with is obviously some of the concerns that they have trying to navigate and negotiate the current art market. So they learn very practical information such as how to do their taxes, how to write grants. They meet with critics and curators and dealers. So they get a wide range of kind of knowledge and get to meet with art professionals.
I think it's extremely important because like other fields in art, it's great to sort of understand the business end of making work. And that's not something that's really taught in graduate school. In my graduate school program, even though it was a great program, we didn't learn anything about the business end of things. I think it's a great opportunity to not only have the chance to show my work to other fellow artists and curators, but also to the local community.
And it's also a chance to be seen in the Bronx Museum's sparkling new home, which is helping to attract art lovers from around the Bronx and the tri-state area.
We want to expand our audience. It's taken a long time to open this building, so we haven't been as visible as we'd like to be, and this is a very important future goal. We have a great youth program here. We really want to be open and have both family members from the community be involved. We run once a month a family program and then all these education programs. We're also open Friday night late until 8 o'clock so people can come by after work.
I really enjoyed the exhibit. We thought it was fabulous, especially the fact that it focused on artists from the Bronx. We think it's really important that they get recognition, and so easy. It was 15 minutes from, on the D train. It's easier for us to get here than to the Metropolitan Museum of Art with, 2 different transfers of a bus.
Beautiful museum, and I really enjoyed the exhibition. Very new idea, and lots of young people attending today, which is a nice thing to see.
The event runs at the museum through August and includes many public programs throughout the run as well. For more info, you can call 718-681-6000 or log on to www.bronxmuseum.org. Are you a real fan? Riverdalian Howie Karpin might be the judge of that. Karpin is an official scorer He's the final judgment call at many Mets, Yankees, and Ranger games.
I've been covering sports for 27 years overall, so I've been around the business a little bit. You know, it adds to your credibility. Being a scorer is pretty special. It's prestigious. There's not many of us in the country, and you know, it takes a special person to do it because you take a lot of abuse on some of the calls and things like that. So you got to know your rules, you got to know your baseball, so it's a pretty special job.
And he recently added author to his resume. I caught up with Howie outside the house that Ruth built to hear about his new book, Yankees Essential, Everything You Need to Know to Be a Real Fan. With a foreword by Joe Torre, the book is chock full of facts usually known by only the most fanatical fans.
Well, the Yankees have been written about so much. I mean, their history is so fact-filled that I tried to come up with fresh stuff, things that haven't been written about a whole lot. And through my research, I found some very interesting facts and tidbits. They're all in this book. And if you're a Yankee fan or even just a baseball fan, you'll enjoy going through it.
So what's harder, being an author or an official scorer?
Official scorer, because you get a lot of immediate feedback. When you're an author, people read your book, you get some feedback, but it's not directly to your face. When you're an official scorer, you get it right in your face most times.
Yankees Essential, Everything You Need to Know to Be a Real Fan is published by Triumph Books and is available at your local bookseller or online.
We do what we like. We do what we could.
Well, that brings us to the end of another edition of Bronx Magazine. Now, if there's anything you ever want to see on the mag, just get in touch with me.
Backyard.
I'm Derek Woods. Hope to see you next time on Bronx Magazine.